Greetings. This is John Joseph Xavier Cihon coming at you from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And today we're going to talk a bit about Tulsi Gabbard's statement about biolabs in Ukraine and all the questions raised by that. Before we do so, please slap the like button and subscribe so you can be notified about videos like this in the future. As well, if you appreciate this content, there are links to leave a tip, and I would ask you to please watch the video to the end and then comment to let me know what you think after you do. It's a small thing, but doing those two things does really help the channel grow. So with that out of the way, I'm just going to get right to it. This is a social media post that politician Tulsi Gabbard made March 14th. And she outlines some statements that prove almost definitively that there are U.S.-funded biolabs in Ukraine. So here we go. 1. State Department's Victoria Nuland acknowledged such labs containing dangerous pathogens exist in Ukraine in her testimony to the U.S. Senate March 8, 2022. Quote, Ukraine has biological research facilities which, in fact, we are quite concerned that Russian troops may be seeking to gain control of. We are working with the Ukrainians on how they can prevent any of those materials from falling into the hands of Russian forces should they approach. Item 2. Pentagon fact sheet dated March 11, 2022 has numerous statements directly and indirectly confirming the existence of such biolabs. The United States, through BTRP, has invested approximately $200 million in Ukraine since 2005, supporting 46 Ukrainian laboratories, health facilities, and diagnostic sites. CBS Face the Nation, March 13, 2022. National Security Correspondent David Martin said he'd spoken to a Pentagon official who told him they're concerned about the existence of such biolabs in Ukraine. Quote, the concern is that the Russians will seize one of these biomedical research facilities that Ukraine has where they do research on deadly pathogens like botulism and anthrax, seize one of those facilities, weaponize the pathogen, and then blame it on Ukraine and the U.S. because the U.S. has been providing support for some of the research being done in those facilities. Item 4. In April 2020, in refuting Russia's accusation the U.S. is using biolabs in Ukraine to develop biological weapons, U.S. Embassy in Ukraine acknowledged that there are U.S.-funded labs in Ukraine working with pathogens for vaccines and other peaceful purposes. Item 5. CNN fact check, March 10, 2022. Quote, there are U.S.-funded biolabs in Ukraine. That much is true. Item 6. Furthermore, according to the DoD, there are 2 biolabs in Ukraine that have been under Russian control for some time. Quote, Russia illegally took possession of 2 Ukrainian-owned laboratories that BTRP upgraded in 2014 and continues to deny Ukrainian access to these facilities. So taking all these statements together, it is an undeniable fact there are U.S.-funded biolabs in Ukraine. There shouldn't be any debate. Yet, what's amazing, maybe not amazing, maybe this is the world we live in now, but Gabbard has been attacked, called a traitor for merely asking questions about these. Adding up all these publicly available statements that all say there's biolabs. Politicians have, Romney accused her of being a traitor. One of the hosts on The View said she should be in jail. So obviously it's true. In war, the first casualty is truth. The truth is that the U.S. taxpayers have funded God knows what taking place in Europe. And there's all sorts of questions that we deserve the answers to that we're probably never going to get, at least not in our lifetime. So a couple points that I've taken away from this. So there are biolabs there. That much is true. Now, when people do research for therapeutic purposes, vaccines. One of the things that is done is to manipulate the materials to make them more lethal, more infectious. Why would anyone do this? Well, one reason you do that is to make a bioweapon. They're not saying these are bioweapons labs, but what I would put forward is, given that they fear that the Russians will take these materials and easily turn them into bioweapons, there's not that much difference between a biolab and a bioweapons lab. So whether or not it's a good idea, in the biolab for the therapeutic research, the materials are manipulated to make them more infectious, more lethal, under the theory that, number one, that could happen in nature, so we need to be prepared for it, or number two, the bad guys who aren't us, it's definitely someone else, they could do this, so we need to do it first to figure out what they would do so we can be prepared for it. Now, that's some twisted logic, but it's my belief, and again, fact checkers, social media censors, this is my belief. I'm not saying this is indisputably true, but I think it's something that should be open for debate, and we're not having discussion about that when anyone who talks about this is shouted down and accused of being a shill for Russia. And it's my belief it's just a matter of semantics that we are engaged in bioweapons research as a country, and we're calling it biolabs just to create plausible deniability. Now, another question that comes to mind is, why place these labs in Ukraine? Why place them in one of the most unstable regions on the face of the planet? That doesn't seem smart. And again, I'm not stating this for a fact, so those who want to shut me down on social media, not stating it as a fact, but a question that definitely deserves answered. Under Obama, the U.S. did have a decree banning gain-of-function research, biological weapons research. What if we place the labs far outside the country to create plausible deniability? That makes sense to me. Is that happening? I don't know, but it certainly is reasonable. One thing that was pointed out by journalist Glenn Greenwald, who's done great work in researching this area, is that we now have more evidence that would support the idea that the U.S. is developing bioweapons than the U.S. had when they invaded Iraq. And this just goes to show you that the rationale for war and what is a justified invasion and what is not, it changes depending on what the people who are in charge of the invasion want. Right now, we're gearing up for war. We're told to ask these questions, to bring these facts up is treasonous. I would ask you, why are we not addressing this? Why are we being told to not think about this? Why are we told if bioweapons are used, it's definitely Russia who does it? It's not us, it's Russia. We're just going to tell you in advance if it happens, it's Russia. Should we trust the same people who have perhaps accidentally, they seem to have not thought this out, and all this information has gotten out, and it becomes quite easy to piece together that there are US-funded biolabs, and now all of a sudden they're denying it, calling it wild Russian conspiracy theories. And why do we fear the Russians getting control of what's in those labs? Now, the World Health Organization said COVID-19's in those labs. Fine. Why would we fear Russia getting hold of COVID-19 samples? They certainly have as many COVID-19 samples as they could possibly want. If they wanted to release them, they could release their own samples. The only reason we would fear Russia getting a hold of them is if they've been manipulated to make them more lethal, more infectious. Otherwise, why would we fear it? It doesn't make sense to me. So there are just so many questions. And again, with anthrax and botulism, Russia has access to these things. Have we manipulated them in a way that we think Russia may not have access to that makes them more lethal? Are we afraid that there are signatures and documents that will support that the U.S. actually is creating biological weapons in these labs? Do we fear Russia getting a hold of that information? These are all questions I would very much like the answer to. And when we live in an atmosphere where asking these questions immediately brands you as a traitor or pushing Russian conspiracies, we're in very dangerous times. Does anyone remember Bush lied, people died? We took at face value claims made about biological weapons, and the end result of that was horror. We're being pushed towards a war again right now. Why? If we don't stop and ask these questions, we are going to find ourselves involved in a conflict that is not going to benefit the people in the United States. It's not going to benefit the people in Russia. It is not going to benefit the people in Ukraine. It's going to benefit the few war profiteers who always make trillions of dollars upon other people's suffering. And there is no benefit for the people in any of the countries involved. Again, I don't know the answers to these questions. No one does. But it's very distressing that all of a sudden we're not allowed to ask these questions. So that feels like a good place to end it. Thank you so much for watching. Again, slap the like button. Subscribe if you haven't yet done so. Comment. Let me know what you think. There's a link to leave donations as well. Thank you for watching. Stay safe. Stay alert. Have a wonderful day.